never stop reading the Bible. Well, today we're going to zero in on exactly that kind of moment for the early Christian faith. It's an incredible story, and it all unfolds across 3 really key chapters in the book of Acts. All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First up, a pretty revolutionary encounter that broke all the rules. Then, we'll see how a whole new kind of community started to form from the fallout. After that, we'll look at a period of major persecution and its surprising outcome. And finally, we'll get to the decisive turning point that pulls this whole story together. So let's jump into our first section, a revolutionary encounter. We're talking about how a single meeting between 2 men changed literally everything. This all kicks off in Acts chapter 10 with a meeting that by all accounts should never have happened. You've got 2 guys from completely opposite worlds, and this one event, it sets the stage for this faith to go from a small, local thing to a global movement. Okay, so this whole encounter plays out in 4 really clear steps, and it feels like each one is pushing the envelope a little further. It starts with Cornelius. He's a Roman officer, remember, and he gets this vision telling him to find Peter. At the same time, Peter, the Jewish apostle, gets his own vision, basically telling him that all those old rules about who's in and who's out, they're gone. This leads to them actually meeting up, which was a huge cultural no-no. And the final piece of the puzzle? The divine spirit shows up, basically giving a stamp of approval on the whole thing. It was undeniable proof that this new inclusivity was the real deal. And what this really points to is something huge, a major ideological shift. We're not just talking about the movement spreading to a new town. No, this was a fundamental change in its very DNA. The core identity was shifting away from something based on your family tree, your bloodline, to a community built on a shared faith. And honestly, that's the kind of change you have to make if you're ever going to go global. And you really can't miss this symbolism here. Think about it. A Jewish apostle, a representative of a colonized people, meeting with a Roman centurion, a guy from the occupying army. This wasn't just about breaking religious rules. It was a divinely orchestrated event designed to tear down every wall you could think of. Social, political, ethnic, all of it. All right, next up, a new community emerges. The big question here is, how does an institution even handle such a radical change? Because, as you can imagine, a revolution like this on the ground is bound to cause some waves back at headquarters. And that's exactly what we see in chapter 11, as the leaders try to figure out what this new reality even means for them. So, how did the leaders back in Jerusalem react? Well, as you can probably guess, it wasn't with a round of applause. Not at first, anyway. Peter gets back to Jerusalem and basically walks right into a storm of criticism. The leadership, they're still working from the old playbook. They're asking him, "You did what? You ate with them?" This was a huge break from centuries of tradition. And this confrontation really just lays bare a massive clash of worldviews. You've got the old view on one side, that this is all about a chosen people based on bloodline with strict rules about separation and a message for just one nation. But then you have this brand new reality that Peter is bringing back, that God's grace is for all people, that unity comes from faith, not family, and that this message is meant for the whole world. It's a total game changer. But this is where the story takes a remarkable turn. Peter just lays it all out. He tells them the whole story, the visions, the meeting, all of it. And the evidence was just overwhelming. His critics had nothing left to say. They were silenced. So the leadership in Jerusalem makes it official. They accept this massive ideological shift. They go from criticism to actual celebration, and they give the green light for this new global mission. And this wasn't just a theory, right? This new global vision found a home, and that home was the city of Antioch. You can think of it like a new forward base for the whole mission. It was the first place where you had Jews and Gentiles worshiping together as total equals. And get this, it's in Antioch that they were first called Christians. It was the birth of a whole new identity, completely separate from where you came from. Okay, Section 3, Persecution and Unstoppable Growth. This raises a critical question. Can a movement survive a direct attack? Because right when things are starting to take off and expand, bam, they get hit with a violent attack from the powers that be. Chapter 12 is intense. It shows us exactly what happens when a powerful empire decides to try and crush a budding faith. And man, things escalate fast. King Herod decides he wants to score some political points, so he goes after the church leaders. First, the Apostle James is executed, just like that. Then he has Peter arrested and thrown into prison. But the community, they respond with this incredible, earnest prayer. And what happens? Peter miraculously escapes. And not long after that, King Herod himself is struck down and dies. I mean, it's a super high-stakes drama, pitting raw political power against deep spiritual faith.
So let's be crystal clear about what was going on here. The goal of this persecution was simple: crush the movement. Herod's plan was totally brutal. Cut off the head of the snake, right? Take out the leaders, James, then Peter, and scare everyone else into shutting up and going home before this thing could spread.
But, and this is the amazing paradox of the whole thing, the result was the exact opposite of what Herod wanted. The attack backfired big time. By hitting the church in Jerusalem so hard, the persecution actually forced people to flee the city. And as they scattered, guess what? They took the message with them. It unintentionally lit a fire under the very global expansion that Herod was so desperate to stamp out. Which brings us to our final section, the decisive turning point. This is the key takeaway from this whole transformative period. So when you put all the pieces together, you've got this huge ideological breakthrough, this major institutional shift, and a persecution that completely backfired. What's the big picture? What's the ultimate turning point? It's this was the moment. This was when the wall between Jew and Gentile was decisively broken down for good, paving the way for a message that could be truly universal. The events we've seen in Acts chapters 10 through 12, they really are the definitive pivot point where this faith broke out of its original cultural box and went global. And all of this leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. What happens when a mission becomes bigger than its origin? I mean, this whole story is about a movement having to wrestle with its own success, right? It had to adapt. It had to evolve because its central idea was just too powerful to be contained in one place or with one group of people. And that's a pattern you see with powerful ideas all throughout history, isn't it? A powerful lesson to consider. Thank you for joining this explainer.